Welcome to the Lost in History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. A metal device was created to prevent enslaved people from escaping through windows or narrow passages. Used in the United States around 1863, the device consisted of rigid bars affixed to the body, restricting movement and reducing any chance of escape. A young African woman is photographed at a colonial exhibition in Belgium in 1958, where people of different ethnicities were displayed in settings designed to mimic native environments. Two American presidents wave and smile from inside a convertible car, surrounded by an enthusiastic crowd. The scene, likely captured during a presidential ceremony or transition, conveys a moment of unity and political celebration. Workers and soldiers begin preparations to build the Berlin Wall on August 14, 1961, one day after the border between the city's eastern and western sectors was closed. Barbed wire, temporary barriers, and surveillance were already in place. United States soldier Woods holds an M60 machine gun with a burning building in the background in Vietnam in 1967. The image was captured during operations in Southeast Asia amid intense combat. Crew members of the HMS Prince of Wales disembark after a Japanese air attack in 1941 in Southeast Asia. The ship was struck during a Pacific offensive and suffered severe damage. Natalie Wood is photographed at her home in Los Angeles in 1960. Having started her career in childhood, she was already one of the most recognized actresses of the era. Nelson Mandela raises his fists in a resolute gesture after being sentenced to life imprisonment in June 1964 during the Rivonia trial in South Africa. Alongside other anti-apartheid leaders, he was charged with conspiring against the government. Japanese paratroopers land in the city of Palembang in the Dutch East Indies in 1942. The operation was part of an offensive to seize oil fields and control the strategic region. United States soldiers marched through the ruined streets of Bastogne, Belgium, during the Winter Offensive in 1944. This battle marked one of the last major actions of German forces in World War II. Health and Safety Chief Clifford Roberts models a fire safety demonstration on an unspecified date. During the event, fire prevention and firefighting techniques were showcased to the public and professionals. Simo Häyhä, known as the White Death, was a Finnish sniper active during the Winter War between 1939 and 1940. He is credited with eliminating hundreds of enemy soldiers in fewer than 100 days. A United States Army soldier, known as a tunnel rat, examines the entrance of an underground passage during the Vietnam War. The Earth is seen by the Apollo 13 crew about 20 hours after a serious malfunction struck the spacecraft in 1970. The mission suffered a technical failure that compromised its power and life support systems. Robert Oppenheimer and General Leslie Groves are photographed together in 1945 in the United States. Both led the Manhattan Project, responsible for developing advanced technologies during World War II. German soldiers celebrate Christmas in a trench during World War I in 1915. With small improvised decorations, a symbolic tree, and subdued expressions, they tried to keep the festive spirit alive amid the harsh conditions of the front. Sergeant Stubby, the most decorated dog of World War I, appears in a photograph around 1920, wearing his military uniform with medals and insignia. Marilyn Monroe performs for United States troops in Korea in 1954 during a special tour. The actress and singer gave multiple shows for thousands of soldiers, bringing music and entertainment after the end of the Korean War. During World War II, British military equipment was disguised as elephants in India to confuse potential enemy observers. The Barne Glacier is documented during the Terra Nova expedition, led by Robert E. Scott in Antarctica in 1911. The British mission aimed to reach the South Pole and conduct scientific studies in the region. The Alaska earthquake, with a magnitude of 9.2, occurred in 1964 and was one of the strongest ever recorded worldwide. The seismic shock primarily struck the city of Anchorage, causing extensive damage and ground alterations. A fake neighborhood was constructed on the roof of an airplane factory in Seattle, Washington, in 1944 during World War II. Marilyn Monroe poses seated with her ankle wrapped after suffering a sprain. Even injured, she retains the charisma and style that made her one of Hollywood's greatest icons. Mrs. Anna Röntgen's Hand, recorded in 1895 in Germany. It was the first X-ray in history, produced by Wilhelm Röntgen, who later received an award for this discovery. Nikola Tesla holds his wireless light bulb in 1919, demonstrating his research on transmitting electrical energy through the air. The invention was part of his experiments with alternating currents and electromagnetic fields. A soldier stands beside his M60 machine gun, mounted on the steps of the United States Capitol in April 1968. A man and a camel pose in front of a Soyuz rocket in Star City, now known as Baikonur, during a photo session. The unusual scene blends traditional and modern elements of Soviet culture and technology. Captain Arthur Rostron and officers of the ship Carpathia pose with a silver cup received in 1912. The gift was offered by Titanic survivors in gratitude for their rescue efforts after the sinking. Maurice Tillet, known as the French Angel, was a professional wrestler who gained worldwide fame for his distinctive appearance. He suffered from acromegaly, a condition that causes excessive bone growth, especially in the face and hands. Electric taxis roamed the streets of New York City in the early 20th century, marking an innovation in urban transportation. These vehicles were quiet, emitted no smoke, and operated on rechargeable batteries. An impressive aerial view reveals the Manhattan skyline covered by a layer of snow during the winter of 1941. Iconic buildings emerge amid the intense whiteness, while streets and rooftops disappear under the silent cold of the season. Linda Carter appears in character as the heroine in a scene from the television series during the 1970s. Her costume, featuring stars, a tiara, and bracelets became one of the most memorable on television. Stunt professionals perform high-speed car jumps during shows in the 1930s. These events were common at fairs and festivals, drawing crowds seeking thrills. Rat catchers work on the streets of Liverpool, England, in 1933 during an urban control campaign. These workers were hired to contain infestations that affected public health. A group of young people pose on roller skates in a room filled with arcade machines, capturing the vibrant spirit of roller derby and urban culture in the 1970s or 1980s. Manchester City player Mike Summerby demonstrates the built-in turntable in his Volvo P1800 in 1967. At the time, the model drew attention for combining sporty design with unusual technologies. Three men wear traditional samurai armor in a photograph taken around 1900, a period when the samurai era had officially ended with the Meiji Restoration in Japan. John Cleese is photographed on the set of Monty Python and the Holy Grail in 1974 in the United Kingdom. The film, a satirical comedy about the legends of King Arthur, became a Monty Python classic. Alexander Graham Bell poses with a working telephone prototype in 1876 in the United States. The invention enabled voice transmission over wires, revolutionizing long-distance communication. Children practiced swimming motions in the schoolyard in 1922, despite having no access to a pool. Lying on benches or on the ground, they simulate strokes and breathing techniques under teachers' guidance as part of a creative teaching method. A knife and scissor sharpener works on the streets of the East End in London in the late 19th century. He carried his tools in carts or portable boxes, offering services directly to the public. Residents of Hanoi shelter in protective structures against attacks built on the city sidewalks in 1967. These shelters were made of concrete or dug into the ground and used during emergency alerts. A man rests on an improvised bed at the Mays Avenue camp in Oklahoma during the Great Depression in 1939. Thousands of families affected by the economic crisis sought shelter in places like this. A member of the Bald Knobbers is portrayed in the Ozark Mountains in Missouri after the Civil War. The group served as vigilantes in the region during the late 19th century. A coal miner's wife and 3 of her children stand in front of the company house in Pursglove, Scotts Run, West Virginia, in September 1938. Families like theirs lived in housing provided by the companies that controlled the region. The city of St. Louis experienced severe air pollution in 1939, with dense clouds of smoke covering the streets. Coal burning in homes and industries was the primary cause of the heavy air pollution. The trading floor of the Chicago Board of Trade appears under construction in 1929. This building was one of the city's first skyscrapers, with a striking Art Deco style. A tower was constructed from barrels of alcoholic beverages in 1929 in the United States, shortly before they were destroyed. The scene took place during Prohibition, when the production and sale of alcohol were banned. Two boys are detained on suspicion of pickpocketing in New York City in the early 1900s. At that time, many youths lived on the streets and engaged in minor crimes to survive. This woman's feet were bound from childhood, following a traditional practice in China in the late 1800s. A foot specialist treats a patient on the streets of Washington, District of Columbia, in 1922. Professionals like him offered quick, affordable care for foot problems. Employees organized files in the FBI's fingerprint archive in 1944 in the United States. The system consisted of millions of cards used to identify individuals and solve criminal investigations. Recently freed prisoners of war celebrate aboard a C-141A aircraft, taking off from Hanoi in North Vietnam on February 12, 1973. A propaganda leaflet produced during World War II sought to reinforce the relationship between the German government at the time and Arab world groups. Alfred Hitchcock strikes a dramatic pose behind a model in front of the iconic Psycho House. The image was captured in an artistic and theatrical mood, reflecting the unique style of the master of suspense, who always blended humor, mystery, and a commanding presence. A man is photographed holding a snake in the Big Cypress Swamp region of Florida in 1910. Known as a snake hunter, he worked in flooded areas to capture reptiles common to the region. Students participate in a boxing class at the Joe Edwards School in Berlin in 1912. Boxing was taught as part of physical training, promoting discipline, endurance, and self-defense. A car accident is recorded in the Netherlands in 1914, showing one of the country's earliest documented road incidents. Vehicles of the time were slow and open, offering little protection for occupants. West Berlin and East German police officers face each other after a woman succeeds in crossing the border during the Cold War. The scene highlights the tension between the two sides of the city, divided after World War II. Donald Sutherland and Clint Eastwood appear in character during the filming of the feature film Kelly's Heroes, released in 1970. The movie blends action and humor set during World War II. Radio tower workers are photographed in 1925 as they carry out repairs at great heights. Without modern safety equipment, they worked on metal structures with a panoramic view of the city. William Howard Taft appears on horseback during an official ceremony in 1905 in the United States. Jimi Hendrix is photographed in 1968 at TTG Studios in North Hollywood during one of his intense recording sessions. Ida Lupino smiles as she poses in a swimsuit during the 1940s, leaning on a railing under the sun and surrounded by palm trees. Known as an actress, director, and screenwriter, she stood out in a male-dominated era in Hollywood, becoming one of the pioneers behind the camera. Gene Tierney poses outdoors during a photo shoot in the United States in the 1950s. Known for her elegance and memorable performances, she was one of classic cinema's most popular actresses. A carousel spins at a local carnival in the state of Oregon in 1941, with tickets sold for 10 cents. These events were popular in small towns, offering affordable fun for families. A lumberjack works attached to the trunk of a giant tree in 1946, using a small axe to cut the wood. Equipment such as safety belts and metal spikes were used to climb and anchor themselves to the trees. A man rides through the streets of London in a Wright-Craft scooter car in 1936. This small motorized vehicle was designed to be economical and practical in urban areas. Norma Jean Dougherty, age 17, is photographed in 1943 in the United States. She had married police officer James Dougherty the previous year, in 1942. Horace Watson records the voice of Fanny Cochrane Smith, considered the last fluent speaker of Tasmania's traditional languages in the early 20th century. The recording was made on wax cylinders, one of the earliest methods of sound preservation. Richard Jordan Gatling poses next to his invention, the Gatling gun, in a photograph taken in 1893. Developed during the American Civil War, it was the first successful operational machine gun, featuring a rotating barrel system that allowed rapid, continuous fire. A roasted potato vendor poses next to his cart in New York City in 1892. The mobile oven allowed him to prepare and sell hot potatoes directly on the streets, especially during winter. The famous Hollywood sign appears shortly after being installed on the hills of Los Angeles in 1923. Originally, it read Hollywood Land and was created as part of an advertising campaign for a local real estate development. The daily menu at Alcatraz prison featured varied and well-prepared meals for inmates. Located in San Francisco Bay, the prison was known for its strict discipline and rigid structure. Zoe Mozart depicts Jane Russell while painting the poster for the film The Outlaw in the early 1940s. Mozart was known for her detailed, realistic illustrations of women, widely used in movie posters. Workers in Indiana are photographed destroying Japanese-made vehicles during a protest in the United States. Regional unions paid $1 per strike as a way to protest against international competition. A solitary fisherman casts his line into the waters in Istanbul, Turkey, in a calm, everyday scene. A firefighter jumps from a building during training, practicing the fall into a safety net held by colleagues. This type of drill was common to prepare teams for fire emergency situations. A soldier says goodbye to his wife and children before shipping out for World War II around the 1940s. The scene was captured at a train station where thousands of families experienced similar moments. A fish market in Amsterdam displays its fresh catch in 1913, with large specimens hanging and arranged on wooden counters. Merchants and onlookers observe the products, reflecting the importance of fishing to the local economy and the city's culinary tradition. The Happy Jack's Canvas Palace Lodging offered simple canvas beds for 7 cents per night in New York City. This type of accommodation was common among workers and the unemployed in the early 20th century. Jim Jarrett wears the Tritonia diving suit in 1935 as he prepares to explore the wreck of the RMS Lusitania. The gear was among the most advanced of its time, allowing for safe deep-sea dives. A 19th century poster shows different levels of intoxication in an illustrated sequence used for educational purposes. An elegant Roman shoe was found in an ancient well, preserved for over 1,000 years. The footwear reveals sophisticated leather details and design, indicating it belonged to someone of high status. A girl smiles with delight upon encountering a penguin in a spontaneous moment captured on an unknown date. The scene likely took place in a zoo or animal park where such encounters were common. The Liverpool Motor Show of 1907 brought together various models and motor transport innovations in the United Kingdom. Held in the early 20th century, the event attracted manufacturers and visitors interested in new technologies. Air Force pilot Jimmy Stewart poses with his father in front of the family hardware store in Indiana in 1945. After serving during World War II, Stewart returned home as a decorated officer. Children play on building structures on an urban street in the United States during the 1940s. With no access to parks or modern toys, they used their surroundings for fun. A weekly food ration for one person in England in 1951 is displayed on a table. The rationing system was maintained after World War II due to product shortages. Liberty cargo ships are mass-produced at the Bethlehem Fairfield Shipyard in Maryland in 1943. These vessels were designed to transport supplies and troops during World War II. A genuine cowboy poses next to his horse on a ranch in the American West around 1880.